Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Dave Jones with StormCenter Communications and GeoCollaborate. This is a 2 p.m. update for the Sensitive Information Sharing Environment Fleet Response Working Group, so we can share information across state emergency operations center, private sector liaisons, and also private sector owner-operator organizations from the food, fuel, transportation, medical supply, communications sectors. So we're all on the same map talking about the same thing. Well, we now have Hurricane Helene. Helene has winds of 80 miles per hour. It is rapidly intensifying, and we can see it. We've been watching it all morning and afternoon here on the satellite imagery. It is very impressive from a meteorological perspective. This storm is getting the energy it needs to grow. It's getting the fuel it needs from the sea surface temperatures, and it's not getting any shear, which is stronger winds up above to sort of tear it apart. What you see ahead of this is a bunch of other moisture that is now causing rainfall, some heavy at times, in the state of Florida, and that will happen today and tomorrow. There are a number of advisories out for potential heavy rain. I'll show you that on GeoCollaborate. So we have a lot to talk about today, and I hope that I can get it all in here without making this go too long. Helene is going to be a major threat to the west coast of Florida, particularly from north of Tampa Bay down to Fort Myers and even Naples. We don't know exactly the size that this storm is going to take over the next couple of days, because that is going to determine the wind field. How far out do the winds go from this storm? Because that impacts storm surge. And so I have a number of things that I want to show you. Let's go to this satellite loop full so you can see what's going on. Right now, here is Milton. Milton is turning in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. Recent Hurricane Hunter aircraft have shown that Milton is strengthening rapidly, and we can see it from the satellite picture. Here's that area of moisture that's streaming across Florida right now, causing quite a bit of rain. Matter of fact, I'll click over here just a second to show you the radar data out of the Tampa radar. You can see a lot of heavy rain. There's some down here causing special marine warnings. This has strong gusty winds in it down towards southwest Florida. But you can see it's not everywhere in Florida. There are some dry spots, but generally speaking, the ground is getting saturated. So back to the satellite picture, I want to zoom in using 1 minute data out of the NOAA Goes East satellite. This is an image coming in every minute, and look at this. This, from a satellite perspective, is a rapidly intensifying hurricane. Look at this. This is a cirrus cloud deck formed by strong thunderstorms that are erupting. Look at these bumps in the atmosphere. These are severe thunderstorms that are rotating around what is likely the center somewhere in this area here. And to the east, you might notice these strong gust fronts. These are very strong outflow boundaries from the hurricane. And you can see they're really impacting any boaters or mariners, cruise ships that might be in this area. Hopefully they're not. But this is an indication that there are very strong downdrafts coming in the outer bands. This looks like it has no inhibition whatsoever to not intensify further. Off to the southeast, right to the southeast here is the Yucatan Peninsula. But you can see in all quadrants of this storm, there are strong thunderstorms forming. And we're going to be watching Milton very, very closely, because this poses a serious threat to the west coast of Florida. And I want to show you GeoCollaborate, and I'll just take that full screen as well, because I've put on here the cone forecast. This is the 11 o'clock cone forecast from the National Hurricane Center. I haven't put on the middle line because it's just too uncertain right now, and people tend to focus on that center line. What this cone means is that Milton will have a 66% chance of moving within this cone. So there's a 30% chance or a 33% chance Milton could move outside of the cone. This is all about risk. It's about risk for positioning utility vehicles to get back into Florida. Earlier today, the governor of Florida has recalled all the deployed assets into Georgia and North Carolina for the recovery operation from Hurricane Helene. They will be returning immediately to the state of Florida to address this issue. One of the other big issues with Florida is the remnants or the damage that Hurricane Helene caused on the West Coast. There is a lot of debris from Clearwater all the way up the coast and down through Tampa into Sarasota, into the beaches out here. A lot of debris on the beaches. That debris has to get picked up so it doesn't become more projectiles or missiles in the water when this storm surge comes from this particular hurricane. Now, I have turned on ocean observation assets as well. We work with NOAA. We work with other organizations like the Scripps Institute of Oceanography that have buoys placed in the Gulf of Mexico. The first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn off the NOAA buoys for a second because I want to show these drifters that have been dropped in the ocean. A lot of these were dropped in front of Helene, and now they're drifting around in the Gulf of Mexico, but they're still collecting data. See this? This buoy right here is detecting 8.2 foot waves, significant wave height with a period of 8 seconds, and a sea surface temperature of 84 degrees. So the Gulf of Mexico is plenty warm. This particular one is a SVPB drifter, taking the barometric pressure and also the sea surface temperature, 85 degrees. There's a lot of energy here, and I can confirm that by showing the this illustration of the sea surface temperatures. Look at that warm water in the Gulf of Mexico. Temperatures are anywhere from 84 to 87 degrees, and a hurricane only needs 79 degrees to thrive. There is a lot of ocean heat potential and content in the Gulf of Mexico. It's like putting in super unleaded gas in your car. It's one of the reasons why we're seeing such rapid intensification of this storm and that the threat it poses to the west coast of Florida. So let me dive into GeoCollaborate a little bit more and show you what's happening here. I want to turn on the threat for potential rainfall during the day today. So this comes from the Weather Prediction Center in College Park, Maryland, and they focus in on predicting rainfall intensity and excessive rainfall. So this here is the likelihood of excessive rainfall over the next 3 days. Now, keep in mind, this doesn't cover the time period where Milton is expected to make landfall. This is just from the moisture that is over the state of Florida today. And so this is at least a 15% chance of flooding rainfall, excessive rainfall over the next 3 days. And down in the southeast part of Florida, this area here has a likelihood of at least 40% chance of flooding rains. That's going to impact preparations, particularly along the west coast, as crews try to get more debris off the beaches and off the beach communities out of there so it doesn't become a hazard when Milton comes. Now, this particular trajectory for Milton will cause a storm surge. This is not like a parallel path of a storm going up to the Big Bend area. This one is more of a perpendicular strike into the west coast of Florida, which is going to generate a lot of storm surge. And I'm going to show you just one example here. I'm not going to dwell on it, but I want to show you one example of what it looks like from a model called the ADCIRC. This is the ADCIRC model from SARA, the Coastal Emergency Risks Assessment, folks. And this is something that I want to point out. Storm surge, the biggest storm surge happens when the storm makes landfall and the right-hand side of the storm is driving a bunch of storm surge inland. So this particular example is based on the 11 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center. And you can see the areas that are really under the gun are from Sarasota down to Boca Grande and into Charlotte Harbor and also Punta Gorda. This area would see a massive storm surge of more than 10 feet above normally dry ground. And this is significant. Now, the reason why I'm not going to dwell on this is because the storm could make landfall further to the north in Tampa Bay or to the north of Tampa Bay. And if it does that, these storm surge numbers will be shifted to the north. It is way too risky to look at one particular forecast and say, I'm good, I'm fine. Because if the storm makes landfall north of Clearwater, we're going to be talking about storm surges of greater than 10 feet in Tampa Bay. The risk is great to the west coast of Florida, and we have been informed that evacuation plans are being put together at a large scale by the state, and they'll be announced likely later today. So this is a sample of the storm surge and what could happen if the storm takes a trajectory into Siesta Key. That is going to produce a devastating storm surges, and the storm is going to be still strong when it moves across the state and will be causing quite a bit of damage as a Category 3 hurricane. It's winds of 120 miles per hour are forecast for the storm. And there also have been and we also just can't take the risk of pinpointing storm surges based on one particular forecast. We're still 3 days out. We have a number of updates to go through. And so back to GeoCollaborate, I want to show you what's going on here. We do have the heavy rain potential during the day today. We have that rain falling across Florida. And we also have the 1 to 7 day, what I call the quantitative precipitation forecast. This shows how much rain could fall through the next 7 days. Now, this does include Hurricane Milton and where it may make landfall. So we're talking about rainfall totals just out here in the Gulf of Mexico of 15 inches of rain falling between now and the next 7 days. That could easily make its way on shore with coastal areas receiving rainfall of anywhere from 12 to 15 inches of rain. That is from the hurricane, not including the rainfall that you get during the day today. So there's a major threat on the west coast for storm surge, wind damage from a Category 3 hurricane. I can't stress enough how significant this storm will be and the impacts it will have as it moves inland. If you think that you were safe during Helene and during Idalia, and it didn't really impact you that much, you only received tropical storm force winds at that, and that was periodically. This storm is going to bring hurricane force winds well inland for an extended period of time, along with storm surge, heavy rains, and potential tornadoes on the northeast quadrant of that storm. So we're going to have a lot of rain. We're going to keep updating you as time goes on and the Hurricane Center issues their official Hurricane Center forecast. It's just going to be a very high impact area on the west coast of Florida where Milton makes landfall. Now, I do want to talk about some of the response activities for Helene because we are providing support for utility vehicles and those folks that are responding there. First, in Florida, where some of the cleanup is still happening along the beaches, we're going to have a storm surge impact, as I just mentioned. It's very landfall dependent where this storm makes landfall and where this biggest storm surges happen. And now is no time to say you're going to wait until Tuesday to make a decision. Utility vehicles need to be staged well north of the expected path of the storm. The wind field, even if the storm starts to decrease in intensity before it makes landfall, the wind field would spread out and make the storm surge larger. So there's a lot of unknowns with regard to storm surge in this particular storm. Rainfall is going to be a major impact. You could see anywhere from 5 to 10 inches of rain in certain areas of Florida today, and then another 10 to 15 inches of rain with Hurricane Milton. Winds will be hurricane force where the storm makes landfall. Now, the radius of maximum winds will be dependent on the size of the storm. But I want to go back to GeoCollaborate for a second because I want to turn off here the expected rainfall, that QPF rainfall, and the excessive rainfall outlook for the next 3 days, and turn on the forecast of the wind radii. This is the wind radii forecast for Milton, and I'll back out just a little bit just so you can see from where it's coming and how the wind radius is going to change. So here's Milton down here in the Gulf of Mexico, and look how large the wind field gets as the storm progresses. And this interior wind here is hurricane force winds. So even if it makes landfall a little south of Tampa, hurricane force winds will come through the Tampa Bay area. And if it makes landfall a little bit further to the north, that will be the worst case scenario for Tampa, with winds driving surge into Tampa Bay. We don't know exactly what the track is going to be. That is why this cone, that's where it plays a helpful tip for us to see. We have to plan for it to move along this way or along this way, along the southern track. But look how wide the wind field is going to be sweeping across Florida. This is tropical storm force winds. This is hurricane force winds going right through. So if you're thinking about evacuating to Orlando, not a good decision. Hurricane force winds will be moving directly through Orlando. Well, let me take a little shift here from the what's going on with the power restoration for Helene. It has been a Herculean effort from the folks who have responded through mutual assistance. The folks at Edison Electric Institute indicate this has been the largest mutual assistance mobilization in electric sector history, where we've had more than 50,000 people mobilized to help restore power. And now we're down to 383,090 customers that are still without power. That is incredible. And the main states are Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. Now, there are many homes and businesses that have been totally destroyed, which won't be able to get their power restored. And utility inspectors will go in there to remove them from the count because they just won't be restored until that building is rebuilt. But you can see this monumental task is really coming down rather quickly. I know 383,000 is still a lot, but when you start with over 4 million and almost 6 million people impacted by the storm, Helene I'm talking about, this is just an incredible effort. And so I want to talk about, too, that as of 8:30 this morning, power was restored to nearly 5.58 million people. Impacted 6 million. That's 93% of customers that are restored. If you see a lineman, you see somebody in a bucket truck associated with them working on the trees, thank them. They have done a Herculean task to restore power as quickly as possible, and that will continue through the time where Milton is impacting Florida. And the good news about Milton is, if I head back to GeoCollaborate here, the good thing about Milton is that it will stay to the south of the impact zone. There's a strong high pressure system up here, and I've drawn on GeoCollaborate this green area, which is the impacted area from Milton. There's a strong high pressure system in a front that's going to keep Milton to the south. So it will not go up the coast. That is great news. But you can see from the wind field forecast, it's going to become a large hurricane. And we're going to be monitoring that very closely because that impacts the storm surge. My advice to anybody who is thinking about what to do and they live on the west coast of Florida is that you should not treat this storm like you did with any previous storm. There is likely a 100% chance that people who live on the west coast of Florida have never experienced a perpendicular landfall near the Tampa Bay area of a storm of this magnitude. Now, we did have Hurricane Charlie. Charlie hit down in Punta Gorda. It was a very compact hurricane, much smaller than Milton is forecast, but this will have much larger impacts. It's a serious storm. We'll be doing another update perhaps later today or tomorrow morning as the storm starts to rapidly intensify. Once again, Milton has 80-mile-per-hour winds. It is strengthening rapidly. This is the satellite image of the 1-minute imagery, and it's just incredible. This storm is going to be one to contend with. Unfortunately, another storm for the record books for the Florida Peninsula. I'm Dave Jones with StormCenter Communications and GeoCollaborate. This has been an update, 2 o'clock this afternoon on Sunday, October 6th. We'll be back again either later tonight or during the morning tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching. Take care of yourself, and please take care of your neighbors.